Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, if I asked you right now to find something in your house.
Yes.
Or your basement.
Yes.
Or your garage.
Got it.
Would you be able to do that with ease?
Maybe. Kinda. I got kids running around that like to put things in random spots that I don't know where they are.
What if your kids had gotten a hold of it?
Yeah, no. Then I got zero chance.
Can you assure me that something you bought 4 or 5 years ago and haven't touched since then still works?
No, I can definitely not assure you that.
Can you assure me if you dug out your Christmas decorations right now that they would all work if you plugged them in?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't even know exactly where they all are, to believe it or not. Okay. Where are you going with this?
Well, because the topic today is asset management.
Okay.
And granted, asset management for our customers and their customers is a much bigger, broader thing than just where stuff out in your house. But think about how hard it is for us to find our stuff and keep track of it all and identify it all. Well,
100%.
It's a lot more important for companies that have assets that, are valued in the thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Or millions, yes. Yeah.
They need to be able to know where those are.
Yep.
For one.
Yep.
They need to be able to know that they're in working order.
Yep.
When the last time they were serviced, for instance.
Yeah.
And to make sure that they're all, because, let's say you're in industry and you have a heavy machine that you use from time to time. Maybe you don't use it a lot. And the next time one of your people goes to use it, it's just not working anymore. The battery's dead or something is wrong with it that never got repaired and should have. Imagine how much money you're losing from not being able to use that machine for a day or two or more.
We don't have time for that. We got to keep things going.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So today we've got Shrikant Nistane from Crave InfoTech. He's going to talk to us a little bit about asset management on that broader sense and how important it is. It's one of those conversations I think sometimes people just take for granted about what asset management means. So we're going to dive into the difference, for one thing, the big difference between asset and inventory management, because there are two very distinct and different things. We're going to talk about the way asset management has changed over time and the way we think about it and why it's so important to take a more proactive approach to it instead of just, this thing isn't working, so I guess we got to get it fixed. We're going to talk about what assets are probably getting, or what enterprises may be getting wrong about asset management right now, and they shouldn't be. And we'll talk through a couple industries that can benefit from this kind of technology that maybe don't normally think about it. Again, we're talking about like warehousing, distribution, manufacturing. We know those people need asset management, but there might be a couple other industries that do too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then we'll also let him talk a little bit about how Crave approaches this differently as well.
Good stuff.
All that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's TEConnecting with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, our guest today, Shrikant Nistane, he is the founder and solution architect for Crave InfoTech. I love lately we've had a string of people who are the actual, they're the people that are there at the beginning.
Absolutely.
The founders, the co-founders, I love that.
These are the subject matter experts that matter, right?
Exactly, because clearly they're smarter than we ever will be. Have you found a company recently?
No.
Neither have I. Unless you count this podcast, and that's I don't. So Shrikant, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience kind of in the industry, and what led you to found Crave.
Yeah, thank you. Nice meeting you both. And I always enjoyed conversation with you guys. I think we had a few in the past.
Yeah.
I am Shrikant Nistane. I'm located in Central Jersey. And I'm what pointed me to found this organization. So I'm into SAP space and into the maintenance. So I'm an engineering by trade. And then I started working with chemical, petrochemical complexes in my early life. And of course, the obvious was the maintenance team. I learned few trades those days, maintenance softwares, optimization softwares, and I started to like it. Then I got involved into SAP around 95, 96 and never had to do anything else. So around 2007, I did my MBA, and I realized that before that, we used to do a lot of same stuff again and again for every client. So I was involved in mobility, I think from 2005 on, 1997, 98 onwards. And we used to do the same kind of activities again and again for the customer. So I said, what about we find out what is repeating, and we make that repeatable so that we don't have to go into the room and try to find out what they want and create the same PowerPoints and all that stuff. So that's where Crave InfoTech was started, and we basically identified 5 or 6 applications where there is a repetition. One of them is asset management and inventory manager, or we also call it warehouse management. So those were the 2 key areas where we found out that there is a repetition, and then we tried to create that as prepackaged solutions where our experience indicates that we meet between 60 to 90% of our customer requirements. And then remaining, we do it through configuration or customization depending upon the individual needs of the customer. So that's how Crave InfoTech started. And then we grew into different areas. So the first was enterprise asset management, then supply chain, direct store delivery or proof of delivery, warehouse management, supplier connect, vendor connect, production management side. So we had then basically expanded into different areas because then customers started asking us, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And it just expanded the portfolio. So now today we have around 50 IPs in different areas, which we were able to create to help our customers. But top one is definitely asset management.
Awesome. We got the right person here.
Absolutely.
And I love also because we just had a podcast a few weeks back with James Cordy about demand and how to create demand with your customers. And I like the idea that your reason for getting into this was that you found that your customers were doing the same things over and over and over again. And a big part of that conversation was helping people realize that the status quo, that you just keep doing it over and over because you think that's what you're supposed to be doing, doesn't have to be that way. There can be better ways to do it.
Absolutely.
And when you, as a salesperson or a marketing person, identify that, it gives you a leg up when you can go and talk to them and say, hey, this what you're doing. I know you think it's just fine the way it is, but you're probably missing out on some things because of it, and we can help you out.
And to Shrikant's, obviously the way they've grown their company, they're up to 50 IP now. So then you 50 different products that has manifested itself over the last 23 some odd years. So there you go.
All right, well, hey, then let's get into this asset management conversation. And in particular, I wanted to talk about some new approaches to the way we think about this, smarter technology to make it happen. And again, I think the starting point is, I think a lot of people, when they think of asset management, equate it with inventory management. That, an asset is a thing, and I'm just trying to keep track of where it's at. Where it is in my facility or who's using it now. And I know that's a part of it, but asset management is about much more than that. At least modern asset management is. So, Shrikant, can you explain the difference to us a little bit more and why modern asset management is an entirely different thing from just knowing where your stuff is?
Great question. So people do use this term interchangeably, and I'm going to go into even the details within the asset management, how it is used differently. So let's first talk about asset and inventory. So the way the definition, by definition, inventory is within the warehouse and the asset is within the plant. Asset is something which is operational, which is used in producing something, which is in production environment. That's asset. Inventory is something which is used to keep the assets running. They lie in the warehouse. So that's kind of a layman English definition between asset and inventory. Of course, inventory, you need to keep record of inventory because you want to make sure whenever you need it to keep the assets moving, you have that inventory available. Also, inventory has a lot of financial implication because you want to always make sure your CFO wants to know what's my inventory because that's the cost of capital. You are sitting on that goes into the balance sheet. So they want to know very accurately where the inventory is. So operations and the financial, they both want to know where the inventory is. Similarly, the operations and so there are different challenges to this. One is availability of the spares inventory, and second is keeping the assets running for the operations. So operations here is very worried about making sure that there is a higher uptime, lower downtime, and making sure that maintenance and the maintenance and the other people who help them to keep the health of the assets good, they are well equipped and available when they need it. And of course, the financial people are always involved into, because for the assets, the depreciation comes into picture because you are using the asset. So as the life goes, they would like to make sure they are capitalized, they are depreciated. So these are the different constituents who has different roles to play into the asset and inventory management. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that starts getting into, we talk about it all the time about how data information is critical in the life of a business. So inventory, sure, that's one thing. I think a lot of our resellers have that fairly well down, in essence, if they play in that space. But when you start getting into asset management, I think we're going to start tapping into some fields that maybe a lot of them don't get into, but there's some real opportunity here, and which is really interesting about Crave. When you get into that whole enterprise asset management and product life cycle and what that means on these to these operations, lots of opportunity here. But again, it comes down to data, and how people are getting the data, tracking and analyzing the data and stuff like that. So
yeah, definitely. And I like the point that you mentioned that the financial folks are the ones who are really paying attention to this, because there's a lot of that bottom line. I took my accounting class. I remember, having to figure out depreciation. And
absolutely. Yeah.
Never wanted to do it again.
Right.
That was never going to be my particular job skill set. But I get that point, and I understand that, like, especially on that asset side of things, it means a whole different thing than just, sure, the stuff you create that you're making and selling or whatever. That's very important. Obviously, that's your profits for your company.
Yeah.
But man, keeping track of those assets that you're using on a daily basis and making sure that, because if your asset that makes this thing that you need to sell in order to make money is for any reason not working for any amount of time, then all that other steps in that chain are out the window, and suddenly those margins are dropping pretty damn quickly after that.
Yep. And a little bit of a tweak on what Shrikant said, because I also, in my mind, I also put into here some things that are maybe outside of the plant, but still assets that need to be managed. Right. I mean, as you know, John, we work with a lot of companies that are into so law enforcement and tracking those assets. That stuff that's high value, anything that's high value, a lot of times it starts creeping into this world where, hey, we need to maintain that. We need to know where it is, what the condition of that, is, whether it's in law enforcement or whether it's in field service or stuff like that. So there's even some creep happening, outside of the plant, I'll say, with enterprise asset management. Yep. But go ahead.
Well, then that's kind of the perfect segue into, where this new approach and this smarter idea behind asset management comes in. And there was a great graphic and kind of explainer about this on Crave's website for asset management. You talk about the maturity curve, and it goes from reactive to preventative to condition-based and predictive. Can you quickly explain those steps to us and kind of what that means and kind of how we've come to think about asset management from no longer being reactive, but actually getting predictive, which is one of our favorite words?
I'm glad you got hold of that particular model. So before I get into the model, I want to talk a little bit more about these assets, right? So what the example I gave before is mainly the manufacturing assets, but there are many assets. Nowadays there are IT assets, right? And there are movable assets. Organizations who use vehicles, those are assets too, because they are used for the whole production or value chain of end-to-end value chain of manufacturing. So there is a production within the four wall, and there are things happen outside the four wall. There are IT assets, and people wants to maintain them differently. Now coming to the maturity curve, yes, this is another thing, and this is our recent identification, is we started talking to customers, and customers are confused. They don't know what to do. They go to the webinar, they read online, and they say, somebody says, you got to have a predictive maintenance. You got to do a predictability. And these guys don't know what to do, because some of them are still on paper. Some of them have manual processes. They don't know whether the data is correct. And then we started thinking, because they go to these big seminars, they hear to SAP, they hear large software, and they all talk about what is the best and greatest which is coming. And this guy has another 10 years to get there. And he's like, what the heck I'm going to do now? I want to get there, but I don't know how to get there. So we basically created this maturity model. So everybody always starts from reactive, and we believe that there are a lot of organizations, they have moved away from reactive and got into the preventive maintenance space. So preventive is typically based upon your manufacturer. There are always recommendations saying your vehicle should be maintained every 5,000 miles, 3,000 miles, or 3 months, depends upon the vehicle. Or if there is a pump, this pump should be maintained every 3 months. You maintain lube oil, you change the bearing, depends upon your usage. So it can be usage based or it can be time based. So those are the two key criteria for maintenance of the organization. So that gets them into the preventive space. Now they want to move from preventive to condition based. That's a hard part. Because now you need to know way more than just the time and performance. You need to know how it is doing right now, real time. And that's where the IoT comes into picture, right? You need to start collecting data. So there are few ways where organizations have achieved this. One is, first thing is to digitize your data collection process. So you bring in your mobility into picture. So you are now executing or collecting the data for execution of the work through the mobile applications. So that's your step number one. But still, it's not always. It's basically what you are doing through mobile enablement is you are basically eliminating the errors at the source. You are collecting the data real time, but still it is not always. And that's where the IoT comes into picture. But the challenges with IoT is it's not easy. It's a buzzword. You have plant, and IoT says you replace your measuring devices, your temperature gauges, pressure gauges, level gauges. It's not easy. It's the hardest part. So it's easier for newer plants or anybody who is going for retrofit, but for existing plants, it's very difficult. It's costly. It's a downtime, and there are so many things involved. So that's where people hit the wall, and now organizations have started doing this. Then they started identifying what is most critical for me. So if I am looking at a chemical plant, petrochemical plant, which is my most critical reactor, let me look at the pumps and the valves and the gauges for those reactors, and let me bring them in for my condition-based maintenance. So now condition-based is, I want to get the real-time data. Now that can be two ways. You just bring in all the data and do the analysis and the decision-making process somewhere else, or they call edge processing. So you do the processing locally at the source itself, and then that will send the details based upon the threshold we set. So now you are using lesser bandwidth, making more decisions locally, and once those trigger comes, you are utilizing them to find out what's the condition and how can I use that better. And those conditions now goes into the predictive. Now the predictive is of course the best, but the problem is predictive needs good data, quality information. And you can have, there are so many predictive algorithms available, but if you don't have quality data, it's a garbage in, garbage out. That prediction has less importance, or it's not going to be effective. So you have to create those stages and create that journey so that when you get to the predictability, you have everything what you needed, and it works the way it should be. So that's how we define this maturity curve. Now, how does this help? So we work with our customers. We held couple sessions, identify where they are, and then we start mapping what kind of tools they will need to go from a reactive to the predictive through this journey, and give them that comfort that, you know what, this is the time you're going to need, and if you do this way, you will be there and successful.
That's a real world example of how IoT is being used in the marketplace, right? I mean, you hear a lot about it, but Shrikant's obviously elbows deep into dealing with that when you get into the condition base. Because you're right, Shrikant. We know a lot of companies that kind of hover around that reactive, preventive, and then how do they take it to the next level? So it's good to hear that it's a conversation, right? It's a consultation with them. It's understanding their business. Maybe they can't put sensors everywhere throughout throughout the manufacturing process or on every asset that they want to maintain. Maybe it's a conversation about the most critical, mission critical parts and stuff like that. But still, it's that conversation. It's a consultation to get there along the way. So yeah, pretty neat.
I love also that you're focused kind of on that you're acknowledging this idea of the baby steps, that it's not as simple as just flip a switch. We go from just reactive to predictive tomorrow. Like it's never that easy. And there's very few businesses or industries that can just do that overnight.
Yeah.
We had Justin from Stay Linked on a couple months back. We were talking about warehousing and when we kind of uncovered this idea that most warehouses are ridiculously far behind in their technology and their innovation. And the biggest part of the reason there is simply that it is not simple to just make those switches overnight. If you're a vital part of a supply chain and you're always moving product or creating product, whatever it is, if you turn off for any amount of time to try to update and upgrade systems, that is valuable time and money that is lost that you need to be in operation. So it's not that easy to just make that shift and that pivot overnight. So I appreciate that you guys look at that and created that idea of like, hey, let's get you from where you are to the next step up and keep moving along. And then again, more importantly, to your point, once you start collecting that data, you can't just make a decision overnight of what that's going to do. That again, you've got to have that quality data. You've got to understand what it means to you and to your business before you can actually build some kind of predictive model out of it. So I love that
and it's got to be quality data. So Shrikant, are you developing relationships with sensor manufacturers and stuff like that? Because I can imagine almost every use case that you walk into, as you said earlier, maybe your product gets some 60 to 90% of the way there, but there's always that 10+% that's customized. Are you starting to, obviously in the IoT world, you're getting more and more involved in all these different sensors and stuff like that. So what's that looking like for you from your perspective?
Excellent question. So of course, in the IoT space, there is no standard, one standard.
Yeah.
So it's all communication, right? It's a data communication. There are many standards. There are a lot of efforts being made to standardize them. Of course, we are not into a space where we develop the connections with the IoT devices because that's a whole new world out there. But there are organizations who develop those plugins, and we have partnered with them, and they basically provide the integration bus, and then manufacturers integrate with them, and we bring that data into the maintenance world to make sure we use them effectively. So it's an evolving technology, evolving world. There are established. See, we were talking about how the customers has difficulty transforming. The same thing is for the manufacturers. The large players like Honeywell, Rockwell, and these are large players and Siemens, they manufacture these devices. They have a hard time identifying the right technology because they cannot just switch everything. They have 90% customers using the old devices, and they just cannot go on new device and say, we are not going to supply you. That just doesn't work. And technology is changing every day. So they are all monitoring this closely, but there are options available now. It has come a long way. There are options available whereby, and we partner with those few organizations. There are some organizations who have now started to provide like a top-up devices. They go on top of the existing devices, get the data from there. So you have your existing setup working well, and on top of that, you get something which is going to pull the data and meet your needs. But again, it's a process. It needs to be identified. There can be a disruption into the process, and that needs to be factored into when you make those changes.
I imagine the partnerships that you're forming, continue to evolve based on that and the new use cases that come into you. I'm sure it's a fascinating world there. Yeah, especially when you're confronted with where you were going. And this is a statistic off of the Crave InfoTech site. 43.9% of facility managers are still tracking using Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. It's like, oh my Lord, that many people are
always
still
so painful to us when we
tracking maintenance and things like that in Excel. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's
tough. That's painful.
Tough.
So then, and obviously that would be one of the things that I'm sure that you see when you work with customers where you go, okay, well, let's start off by fixing that, because if you're still using a spreadsheet or paper and pen in some way, there's obviously an issue. But, when you are talking to various enterprises and potential customers about their asset management, what are some things that you're typically seeing that they're doing wrong, where you immediately think, okay, there's definitely a better way you could be approaching this to get smarter about asset management? What do you find there?
So one thing is, as I mentioned earlier, is their assumption about how fast they can move through this maturity curve. That's definitely. Second thing is, people do get misled by a lot of information available into the open space these days. Everybody wants to get to the 99 yard without running through it. And so that's one part. The second part is how they identify or how they calculate or define their ROI calculations, because every change has to have some ROI calculation involved. That's what the bin counters are looking for. So sometimes people can get misled or carried away with any changes which has higher benefit from the user experience or faster response than the increase in equipment uptime, reduction in the downtime, increasing range time. I think they need to find out what is most important for them and what's going to give them the most benefit. There can be an application which may not be the best looking, but if it has capabilities to help them to reduce the downtime, increase the equipment uptime, and increase the range time, I think that should be more acceptable. Another thing is, of course, the technology is changing so fast. When you look at the mobility, the Android releases version almost every 6 months, and after 3 releases, the earlier version is no longer supported. So every 2 years, because you are basically vulnerable to what is going on outside. B2C is fine, consumer world is fine, but from B2B, and especially whatever is going on right now, companies are extremely careful of what they are doing. So you also need to look at where the technology is going, what is best for me. There are still people who think that the Windows is secure than Android, which is not true. Unfortunately, the data suggests otherwise. And I have seen large organizations which are still thinking that Windows is better. I think they need to go behind the curtains, or come out of the curtains and see what's actually right for them. So coming to, again, they need to identify where they are on the maturity curve and see what kind of tools or change into the process will help them. There is one more big differentiator between any other processes and maintenance is, if you look at the finance, there are standards. There are standards which defines how the balance sheet should be defined, how the P&L should be defined, what is meant by GL account, what is meant by cost center. There is no standard for maintenance. There is no standard. If you have union, you have a different standard. If you don't have a union, you have a different standard. There is no regulatory body. There are only few organizations or industries, like oil and gas has some regulation, chemical has few regulation, probably life sciences has a little bit more regulation, because they are regulated, their cost is regulated, and regulators expect them to do certain way. But otherwise, there is no maintenance standard. So people want to do the way they want, what is most suitable for them. And another thing with the maintenance is the people who are involved in maintenance are typically considered to be less computer savvy. And so they need solutions which will help them to bridge this gap. At the same time, they should be able to do what they need to do and be efficient at keeping these assets healthy. At the same time, empower them through the digital transformation so that they are not bogged down. And that balance needs to be, it's difficult to get that balance right. And that's where sometimes organizations fail. So change management people understanding organizational needs and which people they have, and the technology, I think it's important to bring this all together at the right stage of the maturity curve.
Yeah, that's really good. And, another thing that I'll lump on there is, because it's in the maturity, is the predictiveness, right? I think a lot of companies get that wrong, or enterprises get wrong when in the whole asset management cycle, if you will. It's predicting the lifetime of a product, or the cycle management of that particular product is generally not something that's scrutinized from an analytical standpoint, like it can be. And then also, they don't put business practices around that. So, or configuring the IT and the business information systems around the results of that analysis, right? I mean, having the data is one thing. Yes, we want to make sure it's good data as well, but you have to also put in business practices that react to that, and that's the whole predictive model that I think a lot of companies are going to be striving towards. So lots of good information there. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And I like also the aspect of the idea that there's not much regulation around a lot of this,
right?
That just it reminded me of just thinking like, okay, think of like your car.
Mm-hmm.
The manufacturer will give you the book and provide all this information about when you should get regularly scheduled maintenance. But at the end of the day, that's on you.
It is.
No one makes you do that, even though it might not be a bad idea, because maybe there could be fewer accidents, or less gas consumption, and I mean, there's a lot of benefits that could come from if everybody actually got their cars maintenanced on a regular schedule and did what was supposed to be done. So I mean, I would think that's even more important then in these particular worlds. Well, Shrikant, you briefly mentioned life sciences, and there is some regulatory aspects there, and that also kind of brings us into this idea that there are some industries out there that, again, we talk a lot about, heavy industry, manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, supply chain. I think that's the stuff we always tend to think about when it comes to asset management. But there are other industries that can benefit from smarter asset management practices. Two in particular I saw on your site I want you to kind of riff a little bit on is life sciences for one, education is another one. And then let us know, are there any other industries out there do you think could get smarter with their asset management practices and change their business in some way that they aren't already?
So let's talk about these two first. So of course, life sciences is highly regulated. It's regulated by FDA. They want them to be maintained in a certain way. And asset health is very important. But this is mostly the plant assets, right? These are the assets within the plant, which help to get the manufacturing right, quality right. So the asset management definitely is very important for them. Traditionally, it is done manually. Of course, the maintenance is done manually, but the management is done manually. But we have worked with several customers where we have helped them to go through this whole digitization process, so get them into the predictive mode, and they have now started working to become more condition-based. So they are open for implementing some of the IoT-related information. Also, we have, most of the manufacturing organization has SCADA. So either it's a distributed control system, or they have SCADA systems, or they have PLCs. And then you can get data from there. So that's where the IT/OT challenge comes into picture. And if you can get that data, right information, and use that for right prediction, that also helps a lot. Now, coming to another organization is education. Nowadays, education has becoming more and more asset intensive. Of course, they don't have manufacturing, but because of the e-commerce and digitization, every kid has a laptop now. Every teacher has a laptop. So there is a laptops. Then they are using digital equipments into the classrooms. So all of that stuff is bringing in asset activities within the organization. Now, the education brings in a little bit different type of challenge for them because these assets can be moving from one place to another. So teacher or one school gets 50 laptops and they have surplus, and another school requires those laptops in a school district. You should be able to transfer them from one place to another. How do we maintain those laptops? How do we replace those laptops? How do we acquire them? So there is a complete life cycle from from requisition till the retirement, and you need something to manage that effectively. So working with BlueStar, we were able to create a complete end-to-end asset lifecycle management solution for education, for public sector, or whoever has assets which can be utilized effectively. There is a workflow process whereby one party can request for assets to be transferred or maintained, another party can accept that request, so you have complete paper trail, proper workflow, and then those assets can be transferred from one place to another by internal or external people, and there is a sign-off process, proof of delivery, all of that stuff is included into that whole, and that of course integrates with any ERP you might have. Now again, there are two components, right? One is the operation side, another is the financial side. So we feed it to both of them. So if finance wants to make sure that the assets are moved from one financial entity to another, so that the depreciation, cost, everything is flowed through, we help with that process too. So these are two. Another one, interesting one, is the infrastructure. So ports, airports. We don't think that there are a lot of assets, but there are a lot of assets used heavily. We look at the airport, the escalators, the elevators, the baggage area. There are so many assets, and they are probably used more frequently than any other manufacturing industry. And those assets need very specialized maintenance because human being is involved into that. Can you imagine an escalator is failing and something goes bad and people lose their legs or arms or something? It has more higher cost compared to even the manufacturing. And those assets need very specialized maintenance. And that's where actually the condition monitoring and the predictive maintenance is becoming more and more helpful in those assets to predict, oh, this escalator has ran for 80 hours and this is into the heavy duty area, this needs more maintenance, or the baggage area. So that is another thing I found very interesting from the asset maintenance perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll throw another thing out there, another concept that we're seeing a lot in the industry is anything as a service, right? So you mentioned any of these industries, education, life sciences, airport maintenance, things like that. A lot of companies are becoming as a service type of models. And so having an understanding of how assets, not inventory, but how assets are managed in some of the life cycle and stuff like that, I think it's really important for solution providers to do that. By the way, there might even be some angles here to augment your business by providing that as a service, maintenance as a service to some of these entities too, that where you're providing that monitoring type of service for it as well. But really interesting stuff that's happening in this space.
Yeah. I agree. I like the education one in particular because I feel like there's a nice opportunity there based on what's changed in education just over the last year.
Oh, yeah.
Distance learning became a big thing. And granted, I know we're making every effort to get kids back in school this particular fall. But, we also know that now that, hey, snow days don't necessarily need to be a thing anymore because the kids can take a laptop home with them and get their work done there. Colleges and universities, I imagine you're going to see a lot more of them offering distance programs as a way to attract students from around the country, not just the traditional ones that have always been doing it. And again, it's a lot of assets then that are going to have to be, tracked and maintained if you're providing those for students.
Yeah.
So
the need is there.
Exactly. Good one there. Shrikant, let's wrap this up then by talking a little bit more. Along the way, we've talked a lot about what Crave does and kind of where you fit into to asset management. But is there anything else you want to add about how you approach asset management differently than other companies, or the way, we kind of talked about it earlier. You can go Google asset management and find billions of different, companies that are out there that want to offer you their ideas for
asset management.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the heavy air quotes there. But tell us what you do differently, because you guys are obviously kind of at the top of the game when it comes to this.
Yeah, so I think I alluded to into the earlier conversation a few times. How we approach differently is we have created this asset management maturity curve, and that maturity curve helps us to have meaningful conversation with our customers and help them to identify where they are. It's very important to have a realization of where they are, because a lot of times customers don't know where they are. They think they are doing good, but once you start looking out, or somebody thinks there is a lot of opportunity to do more, and they might be at the top of the game. It's very important for them to help them to realize where they are, and then identifying the right tools for them to take them to the next level. So those two, I think, from the realization and mapping where they need to be and how they can go to the next level. Second is we are not only serving to the operations team, but we also keep an eye on the financials. So we are helping both the key constituents within the organization, actually three, so financial, operations, and the maintenance, and making sure that their interests are served, which helps organization to ensure that their financial benefits are higher and better compared to just looking at the maintenance or the operation. So that's kind of a key area. And from the applications perspective, of course, we revolve around SAP, and then we have several solutions into this space, which include solution for a technician, solution for operations guy to report whenever there are problems, solution for a planner or scheduler to make sure they schedule the work on the go, and solution for people who are supposed to look at the maintenance cost and approve and provide approvals wherever they're needed. So we have kind of a spectrum of applications which help customers to do all this on the go and complement to whatever they might have existing right now.
Yeah, what they do really well, I guess maybe they didn't know this, but they know the challenger sales model, right? So they know 5.4 people are going to be involved in the sales process. They got them all covered, from the planner down to a really complex or comprehensive, shall I say, solution mix, which is really important, because I think that, Shrikant and what Crave InfoTech has done is really built a solution around holistically of that asset management and the other avenues that it can tap into. Really nice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, before we wrap things up here, I do want to, first of all, mention if you're interested in learning more about Crave, reach out to your BlueStar representative. We'd be happy to connect you with Shrikant and his team to talk a little bit more about how you can go to work with them to present asset management solutions. And in a moment, we're going to tell you maybe some specific things you can be talking about to get you there too. Before we do that, I do want to, as always, thank our sponsors, Elo, Epson, Honeywell, and Zebra. We could not do the show without you. Thank you for your support. Hey, if you like the show and you want us to know that you like the show, I mean, we like feedback. We
love feedback.
We need a little bit of, gratification and acknowledgement that what we're doing is important, right?
Or give us some topics too.
That too. So first of all, if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, for instance, leave us a 5-star review. I'd love to hear from you what you think about the show. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future episodes or anything else that we do on our YouTube channel. We're always uploading lots of interesting videos. And hey, if you, if you want to tell us some topics that you're interested in hearing about, if you have some feedback for us, you want to connect with us, find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can also email us, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, so let's wrap up with our recurring segments. First off, the value of the VAR.
Yep.
And in this particular one, as I hinted earlier, I want to give our VARs kind of some talking points as they're going out there. And if they're figuring out, hey, I'd love to partner with Crave, but I don't know where to start with my customers. So Shrikant, can you maybe give us some talking points that our VARs could be taking to their customers that maybe they think, I'm good with asset management. I know what I'm doing. We're fine with it. Meanwhile, they're scrawling stuff on paper, typing one finger at a time into Excel spreadsheets or something. And we know that they can do better. So what kind of questions should they be asking? What should they be paying attention to as they go out and work with their customers to maybe lead them to a strong asset management conversation?
No, excellent question. Actually, VARs have much, lot of, I'll say, power to influence the customers, because they are in touch with them regularly. They are using hardware printer, mobile, tablets, or whatever the, and a lot of time the VARs communicate with the business community more than the IT, because they have to interact with them very often. I think it will be important to talk to them about where they are, right? What are their goals from the asset management? I mean, of course, it starts from the challenges, Sometimes people will come forward and say, you know what, we want to achieve higher digital transformation or higher efficiency, and or we want to have something which will help us to track our assets. I mean, there are many. Now we are going one step further. It's just not tracking asset is not only about maintaining the maintenance of it, but now we are talking about the barcode enablement, RFID enablement, so that you can even go further and reduce the errors at the source, minimize the errors at the source. So I think VARs can talk to the customers about, from the asset perspective, how they manage assets. Do they have any digital transformation opportunities, and where do they think they are, and if there are any opportunities from helping them to do better in the asset management for higher ROI. I think that will be a good talking point for them and understanding more about their asset management strategy.
That's it. That's it. Asset managers are looking to optimize, right? They're challenged with optimizing the workflow. So I would walk in with a very, very simple question. How's it going with the digitizing of your asset management cycle, right? And just let them talk.
If they stare at you blankly for a second,
exactly. Digitizing? What? Oh, we got a long conversation to have. But in all seriousness, I mean, that'll start probing into where they are in that cycle. Yeah, if they don't understand that, they're still on paper or whatnot. Okay, but hopefully, there's some move towards that, and then you can start diving in a little bit more on, periodic reviews of equipment and stuff like that, and workflows, and trying to customize that. All can be had through the digitization process. So that's the question that I would ask, and I think that starts opening up the doors to opportunities and where they may lay.
I agree. The other thing I would add there is, since we've kind of referenced the challenger customer and what we've learned about B2B buying groups, and how there are a lot of potential influencers or people that might have a say in that you don't maybe realize ahead of time. We've referenced it a few times throughout this, that the folks in finance, they're the ones that are probably seeing some of the pain more than anybody else. I mean, the people on the front lines, that deal with these assets, and especially have to deal with it if there is an issue with the asset at an inconvenient time. But I think, maybe if you've got a contact, in the boardroom, or if you know the CFO or somebody in the finance department higher up, that you can ask them about, like, hey, what is it looking like on the books with your assets? Is those depreciation rates higher than you expected? Or do you find yourself having to, spend more money than you expected to on maintenance, on replacements, on repairs? What's going on there?
Oh, you don't have that information? You're not digitizing?
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
That's exactly.
So that could be just one more person that maybe you're not getting in where you think you want to get in, but you've got another person maybe.
There's another question which can be simpler. Sorry to interrupt you guys.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
I missed this one. They can ask, what is your spread of percentage of your maintenance between preventive, reactive, and corrective maintenance? That will give you an indication where they are. They should be, ideally, they should be 20% reactive, 40% preventive, and 40% corrective. If they are off, if their percentage of reactive is higher, that means they need help. I think that will be the first indication for them to find out what's the percentage spread of their different maintenance processes.
There you go.
That was a really
20,
good
40,
split.
40. That's your takeaway right there.
What you don't want is we're all reactive. Oh boy.
Like, well, when it breaks, we fix it. Good one. All right, then, hey, let's wrap up with what's tech connecting with you. This is where we talk about something in the world of technology, science, innovation that has caught our eye, something maybe we're playing with, a gadget or something, whatever's kind of got our attention right now. Shrikant, I'll start with you. What's tech connecting with you right now?
Yeah, I think a couple of areas. One is the self-driving vehicle. I think that's going to be a game changer. Of course, it's in one specific industry segment, right? It's going to be game changer. I think it's going to transform how the logistics operate today. We have so many restrictions, right? Driver can only drive so many hours. You got to take a break. You have many dynamics involved into that. I think driverless vehicle will change the logistics industry and transporting goods from one place to another. So that's one thing I think it's a big change. Second one is, I think, effective utilization of the blockchain into non-financial area will be another game changer. It can be very effectively utilized in diagnosing healthcare problems. Like if you know where this milk is coming from, when you give it to a little baby into the neonatal ward, you should know what's the characteristics of the milk. I think it will help a lot. And there are examples, but unfortunately, blockchain is blocked because people need to talk to each other. They need to share the information, and people are still not ready. A lot of organization thinks that sharing the information is going to take away their IP or create a problem from competitiveness. And I think slowly it will go away. But I think these are the two areas which will be game changer in
two popular topics on what's TEConnecting with you there, and certainly blockchain is one of those that continues to get our kind of our interest. And you stole one of mine, Shrikant, because the whole automated vehicle thing is certainly a topic around here.
Right.
And John, you remember when I asked you just a little while ago, would you get in a driverless car? Right. I don't know if you've made it. You were on the fence, right?
Yeah, it depends on how far it's going and how fast it's going.
It still kind of seems distant, right? Like, I'll deal with it when it gets there.
Right.
Okay, well, here's the headline.
When it rolls up to my house and I don't have a choice.
We're getting really close. GM secured key permit for Cruise self-driving program with human passengers, no backup driver. So this is the first time, I believe, that they'll be able to do this. It's going to be in California, where they're going to be able to actually start going out on the road with their Cruise driverless vehicle and take passengers around. So when we talked about it earlier, it was still in China. You know, I'm telling you, it's getting closer and closer. And to Shrikant's point here, man, maybe driverless is going to be like a thing in the next 5 years. We might be hopping in driverless cars and going around. It's certainly in populations like dense whatever in urban areas.
I can see it becoming an urban thing. Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably a lot of where it'll start. And I could see it for, I don't know, like any kind of sprawling area, like let's say like a World's Fair type situation or something, where you've got, or the Olympics is going on right now. Yeah. Imagine how convenient that would be for Olympic athletes to be able to just hop into a driverless vehicle and get taken to where they're supposed to go. I could see that. Some practicality there.
Yeah, Shrikant, I don't know on the logistics side. And remember that trucking company that was just in the
news?
That
guy just got, I think he just went to court over that recently because it popped up in the news again.
Was that an autonomous vehicle or just an electric vehicle?
They claimed,
or was it both?
It was. I think it was. Well,
I think it was electric.
It was
right?
definitely
and so they
electric,
rolled it
but
down
I feel
a hill.
I feel like there was some autonomy to it.
I think
there
was
was
too.
because
because
the whole thing was that it looked like it was driving on its own.
Yes.
In reality, it was just rolling
straight down a hill.
Yeah, and they completely bamboozled their investors and made millions of dollars off of that. Yeah.
So I'm into autonomous vehicles, but then you hear stories like that, and it's like, oh, well, maybe we're not quite as close. But hey, I'm telling you, California Cruise, you might see a Chevy Cruise out there or a GM product with no driver. Yeah. So don't be surprised if you see that. So anyway, that
will be alarming though. The first time you look over and see that there's no driver, aren't you going to be a little alarmed by that?
And it's not the grandma that.
You remember what people used to say 5 years back when we were talking about drones to be used for delivery.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Reality
true.
Now.
Yeah.
It's true.
It is a reality now.
Yeah.
Right?
I know we can resist all we want, but
I believe Amazon got the permit for that in India.
Oh, did they?
They have. Yeah. It's very important because especially in highly dense and areas or countries where the traffic is a problem, that's the solution.
Yeah,
that's the solution's right.
So it was a distant reality. Maybe you're saying, oh, no way. What's the drones? What's going to happen with there will be so many FAA rules and all that, but they are clearing it.
Yeah.
We're heading there.
Lots to come. What's TEConnecting?
It'll be interesting to revisit some of these conversations like 10 years down the road.
Years.
And we go like, how dumb were we? We didn't think this was even going to happen at all. All right, here's mine. So this is an interesting article I came across from The Conversation, which I think is a British site.
The Conversation?
Yeah. Nice.
Sorry. Yeah.
And they're basically saying that the headline is Factories of the Future, we're spending heavily to give workers skills they won't need by 2030.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, and basically, like the gist of the article is like, this idea that there's a lot of investment and time being put into training programs and like starting at the high school level and post high school of, getting these people all these skills to go work in warehouses right now and to get them into these jobs. And yes, that stuff's important, but are we spending too much money and too much time on training people on skills in factories and warehouses and facilities
that are not going to be there,
that will literally no longer even be necessary in, even like they said, by 2030, in 10 years, that will no longer be necessary because we will all these new Industry 4.0 and robotics and all these IIoT machines. All this stuff is going to reshape that dynamic entirely, and these people that will no longer have to do a lot of these same jobs. Ideally, they'll be shifted over to other jobs, and other work within the same facility.
Right.
But again, should we be putting that much time and investment into that, or should we just be getting, hey, here's what you need to know right now in order to get started, and we'll figure it out as we go, knowing full well that within a few years' time, potentially, your entire job is going to be different than it was before.
Really interesting. Yes. We're going to have droves of people that can manufacture something that doesn't need to be manufactured anymore.
Right? I mean, we talk a lot about, and I think we were just joking about it before this podcast, about the idea of going to school and getting an education on things that won't matter by the time you're actually in the workforce or 10, 15 years down the road. I mean, how many things did you learn about in high school or even in college that are completely irrelevant
a lot
to you and your life? And not just because it's not what your job is,
right.
But maybe literally is stuff that no longer is even important anymore.
Oh, believe you me, I got my kids hammering me daily on this. Like, Dad, when am I ever going to use the Pythagorean theorem? Yeah, I know, I gotcha. But it's still, it's got your critical mind thinking blah, blah. Yeah.
Well, they've got a good point when you say, like, my calculator can do this. Why do I need to do it myself? That's kind of the same thing we're saying here. The robots will be doing this. Why do I need to learn how to do it myself?
So we got to pivot on to something else is what you're saying.
I guess so, yeah.
There you go.
So.
Okay. Anyway.
All right, that's what's Tech Connecting with us. Shrikant Nistane from Crave, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Pleasure was mine. Nice talking to you both, and I hope this helps people and our customers and the VARs to help maintaining the assets more effectively and increase their lifespan. So thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you.
Think so. Well, then it is time for us to unplug. Until next time, go get your cars fixed. Follow some of those guidelines. Come on.
Digitize your maintenance.
Digitize your maintenance. There you go.
There you go.
And until next time, stay connected. Built with versatility in mind, Elo EdgeConnect offers a wide assortment of peripheral options for your digital display. Whether for endless aisle, self-order, or collaboration, you can seamlessly attach up to 4 peripherals to the touchscreen edge with flexibility to add, remove, or change later as needed. Options include barcode scanners, EMV cradle, customer-facing display, webcam, and more. To learn more, visit Elo's microsite on BlueStarInc.com or contact your BlueStar account manager. Powerful printing should be easy, and that's what you get from Zebra's newest advanced desktop printers, the ZD421 and ZD621. Offering direct thermal and thermal transfer models, these printers build on Zebra's proven and popular past for flexible, secure printing in a variety of industries. Ribbon cartridge, RFID, wireless kit, peeler cutter, full shift battery, touchscreen, these are just some of the features and options available to customize for any need. With a 2-year warranty and robust service options to maximize uptime, the new ZD series is designed to last. To learn more, check out the link in the show notes or contact your BlueStar representative.